Colt Cabana, boom, boom. Colt Cabana, boom, boom. Colt Cabana, it's Colt Cabana.
Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood. Weeknights on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app.
Straight out of the shy, Mr. Shake and Bake, Colt 45. Wrestling cause it feels alive. Great memories and good times.
You listen to Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app. Glad that you're with me here on this Thursday night. We're talking White Sox baseball with Josh Nelson from the Sox Machine coming up at 9:15. And don't forget, yes, it is Throwback Thursday. An hour from now, Throwback Thursday, and we have got a good one. You want to know what it is? You know what it is? What would be your walk-up song? Right? You know, if you were in a big crowd and you were introduced, you'd want a walk-up song, right? Just like baseball players or boxers or professional wrestlers. So what would be your walkout song? That's our question coming up at 9:35 for Throwback Thursday right here on ESPN 1000. We turn now to not just my champion, but your champion, the National Wrestling Alliance National Heavyweight Champion. He's the godfather of pro wrestling podcasts that drops every Thursday on SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find him at coltcabana.com. He's got his own merch website, coltmerch.com. He's Chicago's own Colt Cabana, and he'll be at the Ring of Honor show at Villa Park at the Odeum on Sunday, May 12th at 7 o'clock. He also will be part of StarCast, which is a pro wrestling convention emanating from Las Vegas, Nevada. He'll have his podcast, Art of Wrestling Podcast with the Young Bucks and many others. And Colt Cabana joins me, Jonathan Hood, right here on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app. Let's start here, Colt. Defeating Willie Mack, you are not my national heavyweight champion. You're everybody's national heavyweight champion. So be able to travel to Concord, North Carolina, what was that process like to even get to that town?
Well, I don't know. I was wrestling in New York the night before for Creative Pro Wrestling, which is owned by Kurt Hawkins and Pat Buck in New York City. So, my travel schedule is always hectic. Right now I'm sitting in a car in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So, I jumped from Newark to Charlotte and drove to the building, and to get there and to see the NWA logos and the old school ROH logos, and to see all the old and the new, the Midnight Express and Stan Lane and beautiful Bobby and Nikita Koloff, and then some of the new age wrestlers, Bandito, Flip Gordon, myself. It was an experience. It was really cool.
Yeah, I don't think the fans really realize, unless they are listening to your podcast, which we'll talk about in a little bit, just the travels, the hectic travel that you got to get through to be able to get from one city to the other. But you were able to get there, right? So there was no problem.
Yeah, the schedule is wild. I was just in Los Angeles for 3 days. I was home for one night and then right back on the road. We did Buffalo yesterday, Toronto tonight, and then we'll be in Grand Rapids and, of course, Chicago on Sunday, May 12th, in Villa Park. So, it's a wild schedule. But I got there, and I was able to wrestle Willie Mack for the NWA National Championship.
I'm so happy for you, and just enjoyed that match. What'd you like about that match and just working with Willie Mack?
The crowd was awesome and very respectful. I think, I like to think I know my audiences, and I can play to a different audience. And so obviously in North Carolina, it was a very respectful, traditional, they were traditionalists, the wrestling fans. So I kind of try to keep my shenanigans to a minimum and give them kind of some pure wrestling. And I think Willie and I did that. And Willie's obviously such a talent. He's wanted by so many promotions, and he's a great wrestler. So it was cool to be able to beat him.
The godfather of wrestling podcast, Colt Cabana, with us. Go to coltmerch.com. We'll talk about the merch that Colt has. He's with me, Jonathan Hood, on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app. Well, Colt, what are your thoughts about the business right now, the way things are going with ROH, budding AEW for the future, just the way that the indies and the popularity of the indies is going? What do you think of where we are right now in 2019?
I think it's cool. People are talking. When I started wrestling, it was 99, and so when I had a couple of reps under my belt, the only thing in town was WWE, and so now I think with everyone kind of talking and people wanting to wrestle for different places, I think that kind of buzz is needed, and I think it's needed to kind of spark the industry a little bit. And so, it's kind of like sports where changing teams might do a little better for some people as if they were just stagnant on the same team for so long. So I don't hate it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I do too. I want people to also know about you being at StarCast. You have a live Art of Wrestling podcast. It's going to be with the Young Bucks live from Las Vegas. I'm looking at the stream right now, Colt. It's 15 days, 5 hours, 40 minutes, 9, 8, 7. So I'm looking at the stream right now. That should be a lot of fun. Again, a live Art of Wrestling podcast, being part of StarCast, which is I was part of it in Chicago, bringing Tuesday Wrestling Tuesday to it in Chicago. Now it's in Las Vegas. Now, how big is this event and you being able to do this with the Young Bucks?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's not just the Young Bucks. I know Joey Janelle is going to be there, and I got a couple other guests. So the live podcasts are always fun to do. I did one, like you said, last year at StarCast, and I actually had the Young Bucks last time, and of course, legendary Chicago comedian Marty DeRosa. He joined me, but this year, they had me. I was overlapping with the Ric Flair roast, and I said, Conrad, who runs StarCast, said, I am not going to go up against the Ric Flair roast, A, because I want to watch the Ric Flair roast, and B, I don't need that kind of competition. So I'm going to be directly after it, and if you're not in Vegas, you can watch it on the Fight TV app. That's downloadable, and they have a bunch of packages. So those conventions are a lot of fun, and the StarCast ones are more centered around kind of like my generation of wrestlers as opposed to the older generation of wrestlers. So I think it's nice to be wanted and looked up to at these conventions. And so on top of signing it and doing autographs and selling merch, of course, I'm going to be doing the live podcast, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
We've got to push the merch on this show, Colt. We got to push it, all right? So Colt, because I know this is what you want. I have a list of things I've got to plug for you. So ColtMerch.com, because I always got that laundry list because you'll go and so I'll make sure I was prepared, right? So ColtMerch.com. So you've got a micro brawler, a variant of a micro brawler. So what's with this Big Josh beard on this thing? Do you have one that's clean shaven, or do you have a Big Josh one too?
Man, I got a decent beard, and Kurt Hawkins, he gave me some gruff on it. Kurt Hawkins, who has, along with Zack Ryder, and you know this, but I'm happy to plug their podcast, which is the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, and they talk about all these action figures. They're obsessed with action figures, and so they love the idea that I have these micro brawlers. But the new brawler, which is available at Colt Merch, of course, it's got a little thick beard, and I don't know, I wear a beard these days, and I didn't think it was that bad. But Kurt Hawkins thought it was a little too thick, much like Big Josh.
Right, exactly. But so there is no clean shaven one yet, though, right? We got to get the one and the other, don't we?
No, the first one, the original one that came out, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that was clean shaven. But okay. I was wearing a beard, so I was like, I said to the owner of Pro Wrestling Tees, we can't have clean shaven. He's got to have a beard of some sort, and so. The way they make these things, it's kind of either one or the other, and so I got stuck with the big dog.
Coach, this is, you're in it, so maybe it doesn't really, you don't think about it like I'm looking at it as a fan, but man, it's like, that's got to be the coolest thing. You're growing up and you're watching and you're seeing these figures from the WWF in the past and these thumb wrestlers and all this, and then for you to be able to have your own merch and be able to have your own figures, that has to affect you, right? You got to think that's cool, right?
I do. What I like is being able to give them to kind of kids or nephews that I have or my friends' kids, and so that's kind of cool for me. I like that idea that they're easy to just they're at home. I can grab them. I can kind of hand them out, and I guess. And people, fans, they'll tell me that they carry them in their bags or they carry them in their purse, or people have made keychains out of them, and so to know that you're kind of always with them in figure form, it is very cool. But Scotty Goldman, who was my name in WWE for 7 matches, yes. He never got a figure. So a little bit of me is a little salty, as in my head, because I grew up with WWF wrestling figures, the big rubber LJN ones and the Hasbro ones. So a little bit of me wish I had one of those, but maybe that's the last goal in wrestling.
To be at the Crockett Cup growing up as an NWA fan and just watching how. To see the legends come back, for me, that was just great. And to be able to see so many of the current wrestlers interacting with the veterans of the past was cool. I've never asked you this before. Is there a territory that you wish you would have grown up in, that you could have wrestled in the 70s or the 80s? Like, could you see yourself, bleeding every night in Mid-Atlantic, or do you see yourself in Portland someplace? Is there a territory in particular, like, man, I wish I could have been able to work there?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, right? Like, I've heard so many cool things about the Portland territory, and you see things with old Buddy Rogers and Roddy Piper doing stuff, and of course, Florida, and even Detroit with the Sheik. Like imagine wrestling the Sheik every night. But I think with the Andy Kaufman stuff, my kind of obsession with comedy, and also just kind of the zaniness of Memphis. I think it would have been really cool. I mean, I know I would have gone broke and had to live in my car, but to wrestle in Memphis and maybe tag up with Jerry Lawler. I wouldn't want to be one of his foils because you just wrestle him for 2 weeks and then you're gone forever. So maybe a partnership with Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee would have been cool in Memphis had I been able to stick.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. Colt Cabana with Jonathan Hood on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app. Ring of Honor is back in the Chicagoland area, the Odeum in Villa Park, Sunday night, May 12th, a 7 o'clock start. And get your tickets at the box office or go find your tickets, ringofhonor.com. Saw you through the first pitch at Guaranteed Rate Field with the championship, by the way. Jay Lethal, he asked me for advice when he was the champion and he was at Guaranteed Rate. I said, just don't be 50 Cent. Okay, just get it over the plate, or at least somewhere in the same area. So what was the feeling like you wearing the championship and then throwing out the first pitch?
Don't be like 50 Cent or don't be like Baba Booey, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah. And believe me, and my high school friends, they all sent me the clip of Baba Booey and 50 Cent beforehand. So they were like putting it in my head, I think trying to get me there. First of all, a fan came up to me and I wasn't going to wear my NWA National Championship on the mound, but a fan came up to me and he said, "Hey, Jake, where's your championship?" I was like, "It's in my bag." And he's like, "Lethal wore the title while he pitched." And I was like, "All right, fine." So that one fan telling me, front row at the park that Lethal did it. So I caved into peer pressure, and I got it in there. I didn't one hop it. It went right there. It was a pretty decent pitch. But beforehand, I was throwing and I was warming up, and I was doing some pretty good throws. And the guy who was catching with me, he kind of squat down like a catcher, and that's when I started bouncing it. So then I got real scared. So I kind of did a half lob. I mean, it had a little bit on it, but I didn't want to get it too into it. It was my first time. Hopefully, there's more scenarios in the future. Obviously, being a Cubs fan my whole life, I'd love to do it at Wrigley. But the pitch was okay. And not that much pressure. Also, it was a 3 o'clock game day on a doubleheader. So there was going to be more people in Ring of Honor on Sunday at the Odeum than there was at New Comiskey or whatever you call it.
Jerry Reinsdorf just texted me. He said, "Guaranteed Rate, sir. Guaranteed Rate Field," with the arrow pointing down.
Sorry.
Don't do that. I know. Go ahead.
I went there and I was like, "Wait, it's not the Cell anymore?" They were like, "No." I just stopped calling it Comiskey.
Right, exactly. The Odeum in Villa Park Sunday. Again, it's going to be a 7 o'clock start. Get your tickets for Ring of Honor and Colt Cabana with me, Jonathan Hood, on ESPN 1000 and the ESPN app. Colt, who makes you laugh in the business?
Well, it's funny you say that. I just worked out at Santino Morello's gym here in Toronto at the Battle Arts Academy, and he was on my bucket list of guys I really wanted to wrestle with or be involved with, especially when I was kind of in my hottest period in wrestling and he was at his hottest period. Like, it just seemed like we should have crossed paths. And then one of my other favorites that really cracks me up is Grado, who wrestles out of Scotland, and he's on Scottish television, and he was on Impact a little bit, and of course he's in the documentary that I made, Wrestling Road Diaries 3 Funny Equals Money, available for download at digitalcolt.com or hardcase at coltmerch.com. But he's a natural comedian, and so I do love Grado.
All right, last thing, and I appreciate your time. I just want to know, is there something that you still want to do in the business that you haven't gotten to do just as of yet? You've traveled the world, not just Chicagoland. You've traveled the world with your business, and you've got the best podcast, again, the Godfather of Wrestling podcast. You've got your merch. What else do you want to do?
Well, I had a couple on my bucket list just almost in January, and since then I've wrestled at Madison Square Garden, which was on the list, and I did that this past April, almost basically a month ago, and also to kind of have a nice like impactful position for New Japan Pro Wrestling, which I did this past March. I was in the New Japan Cup, and I made it to the third round, and I felt I made some new fans and really impressed the Japanese fans and the fans of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And so I think the last one would be the Tokyo Dome, which is New Japan's big show every single January 4th. And hopefully, I did well enough and made an impression that I would love to team up with Yano and the Tag League in New Japan, and then hopefully move forward to the Tokyo Dome in 2020. And I think that's kind of something I would love to do in the future.
Hashtag goals. There it is. You always got to be able to have goals, man. I get it. That's why I asked, because you've done everything, and I couldn't think of anything else that you could do that would be like, wow. But there's always something, right?
The Tokyo Dome is the one, and that's, last year was 45,000 fans. And 2 years ago, I went to the Tokyo Dome as a guest of a lot of the wrestlers because I was over in Japan wrestling for a promotion called DDT. And I was touring there at that time. And I obviously had the day off. Nobody's running against the Tokyo Dome. So I got to watch the show. So it would be something to be able to wrestle on it.
And what about this? Like the best color analyst ever in the business. You're doing really well with that, by the way. Thank God you're not some character or being someone else. It's you, which is refreshing.
Yeah, I'm enjoying doing color commentary for Ring of Honor. Of course, Sunday at the Odeum I will be wrestling. But for the most part, I'm doing commentary, and I really enjoy doing it with Ian Riccaboni. I think Ian is so great at what he does. And, yeah, that is something that was something when I started doing it, I took it as a challenge to try to become the best that I could be at it. Now, the thing with that is with a color commentary, you really don't become the best overnight. You look at some of these commentators, and it's 10, 15, 20 years, so it's a real long-term thing if you're going to do it. But I think it's great for me. I just turned 39 a couple of days ago, and so the wrestling will slow down. And if this is a job for me to last and to be able to stay in the wrestling industry, into my 50s and 60s, what a great opportunity, and I'm going to make the best of it.
You just need a little catchphrase. You'll have one. Maybe Gordon Soley, a little just throw it in there every now and then.
Well, I'll tell you this, and not a lot of people know, is Ian Riccaboni, his catchphrase is Happy Wrestling, and that was one I gave to him. So I should have kept it for myself.
Come on, Mr. Trademark gives his stuff away. What are you doing?
I know. I've been thinking about the old Jack Brickhouse too, like a good old hey. But I should come up with my own thing though.
Yeah, but that's like a you know what? The nation may not know that. That's a good little wink to Jack and to Chicago.
I think you and I are the only ones that know that.
So let me go through the list. The Art of Wrestling with Colt Cabana. You're going to be at StarCast in Las Vegas. You have a number of guests, including Young Bucks. Go to Fight TV. I'm looking at the stream right now, official pay-per-view live stream for Colt Cabana. Get his merch at coltmerch.com. Go to coltcabana.com. And don't forget the podcast, wherever you download your podcast. I get it from SoundCloud and sometimes iTunes here for the Art of Wrestling podcast. And look out for the new action figures as well, because the micro brawler is pretty funny.
Thank you. And also, I'm like I said, like you said, I beat Willie Mack to become the NWA National Champion, and I plan on touring that around. And they have a really fun YouTube series. It's just youtube.com/NWA, and you can watch that 10 Pounds of Gold every week. And Dave Lagana works very hard on it, and I think it's a cool little fun thing to watch. A nice consumption of just 10 to 20 minutes of wrestling every week.
Well, I've been seeing this. So are you going to be like in 10 episodes and like a dark background and you staring in the screen crying? You going to be real serious? Is that what's going to happen? Like, this is exactly what I've always wanted, to be the national champion, and I got to tell you, this is great. Is that going to be you? Are we going to see you in like the dark side of Colt?
Yeah, they're gonna cut out my scene from Chicago PD and just insert it into the national championship.
Oh, that's gonna be great.
My acting chops.
Hey, it's Colt. Look at this guy, Chicago PD. Funny thing about that show, Colt. All the crime is apparently in back of the yards or Bridgeport. Odd, is it not?
Yeah. It's so funny. I got casted on that show, and then I was like, well, I better watch it so I know what it's about. And then I became obsessed with it, and now I binge watched probably 80 episodes in like 3 weeks, and it's great.
It just, I love that show. I just think that I think we know the city, you and I, hey, there's something going on in Bridgeport. We gotta get over there. Chicago PD.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, there's crime everywhere. But just only in that area. I think it's just a district I think they should take care of. I enjoy that show too. Thanks for coming on as always, man. And again, Ring of Honor is going to be this Sunday, 7 o'clock at Villa Park at the Odeum. Get your tickets at the box office. As always, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, and anyone can say hi to me on Twitter and Instagram at Colt Cabana. Is that enough plugs?
Damn it. I missed one. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, JS.
Jonathan Hood on ESPN 1000, ESPN 1000, ESPN 1000,